on TikTok or watching on YouTube. I'm Korene Stuart. I'm the Director of Programming at G Code. I, of course, sympathize with anyone who is transitioning into tech because it was my journey too. I taught myself coding initially, and then went on to a nonprofit boot camp that then became a programmer, eventually getting into project and program management. I am a fierce advocate for STEM education, and I connected my passion for using technology to make this positive impact, especially in communities of color and underserved and low wealth communities, because there's so much that can be done in those communities. And what I see is that there's just not more intention. And so I always like to declare my intention that I am going to help those communities, and I am going to do it through the best way I know how, and that's promoting STEM education. All right, so this mission that I just explained is what brought me to G Code. We're a nonprofit organization empowering Black, Brown, and Indigenous young women and non-binary people of color by providing an inclusive community, quality education, expanding access to economic opportunities through careers in the tech industry. Our program, Intro to G Code, serves between the ages of 18 and 25 who live in the United States, have earned a high school diploma or GED. We foster a sense of belonging and holistic support for each of our students, or fellows as we call them. Our Intro to G Code is a free virtual 12-week intro programming course that offers foundational coding skills in CSS, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. We hold classes on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and hold about 9 to 10 career and personal development sessions throughout the 12 weeks that the program runs. We give our fellows one-on-one guidance on what steps to take next after graduation, whether that's an internship, apprenticeship, or applying for an accelerated boot camp. Another component to G Code is our house. It is a 5,000 square foot co-living residential space in addition to 2,000 square feet of learning and working space in Roxbury, Massachusetts. The vision is that it will host up to 12 students for up to 2 years as they complete extensive technical training and internships before transitioning into full-time tech jobs. And just so you know, our applications are actually open right now for the program up until February 27th. All right. Now, I decided to hold this talk, and I know some of you just got a notification just the other day. So it was just something I kind of threw together because I know about the topic, because I had questions. People were asking me, well, is it still worth entering into the field of tech? There are a lot of comments on LinkedIn that I spent a lot of time on from people who are very nervous about the future of tech and what their role will be and how that will affect them. And those who are in programs, those who are just graduating programs, and they're rightfully so to be nervous. I understand. Looking at the news is can be very disheartening. It's kind of hard to turn away from that much news that's happening around the layoffs and the thousands of employees who are being affected by those layoffs. So your question may be, is this a sign that you should pivot and set aside your dream of entering tech? Should you wait until the layoffs have subsided? For those who are looking for better opportunities, who you may be unemployed long term or severely underemployed, which is the fact for a lot of low wealth communities, is tech still a safe bet? And the answer is there are plenty of things that can answer that. it's a multifaceted resolution, but I am going to explore some of the hard facts that these layoffs are hitting tech hard. Companies like Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, IBM are announcing job cuts, seems like every single week. Microsoft reported earlier in January a weaker than expected revenue and a double-digit decline in profit for the final 3 months of last year amid broader economic uncertainty and lower demand for PCs and software. Their plan is to lay off 10,000 employees as part of the cost-cutting measures. Google made a decision to cut their funding for projects in their startup incubator, which is called Area 120. And that canceled 50% of the projects from last year. And this year, other big tech companies are following this trend. And that actually stifles innovation and progress in the industry. Amazon laid off 18,000 employees while simultaneously investing 10 billion in open AI, and I will talk about that a little bit later. You would have had to be under a rock to not hear about the chaos of Twitter's layoffs and the reasoning behind it, as tweeted by the newly minted CEO, Mr. Musk. And I mention these companies as they are the most well-known tech companies and employ some of the largest workforce in tech. These statistics that I refer to are cited from layoffs.fyi, which is a tech website that tracks layoffs, created by Roger Lee. It is important to note that these tech companies have roles that are unrelated to technology, but those roles are also counted in the layoffs. And as you can see here, just from the beginning of 2023, 234 companies have had layoffs affecting 75,912 employees, and this number is as of yesterday. As I speak about these numbers, I want to make sure that I give you this perspective because, it wouldn't be fair to not put these numbers in perspective. So the US, okay, the country, US, has 585,000 tech companies with over 7.3 million people employed by these companies. And so a lot of the reasons, and I've seen the articles, I've seen people's opinion about why layoffs are happening, but and I had an inclination of why these tech layoffs were happening, but I wanted to make sure that I researched to give you a real answer of why they're happening. And there's a variety of reasons why they are happening. Decreased company profits, restructuring, cost-cutting measures, a shift in company strategy or focus, automation and advancements in technology that leads to job redundancies, as you can see with ChatGPT. But you can only go as far with the ChatGPT, but that's part of the issue. Mergers and acquisitions, economic downturns or recessions, and then of course changes in the market. Now, tech companies went on a hiring spree in late 2020 through 2021. They could not get enough people in. People were turning to technology to work from home. People were home, they were shopping. People were isolated, so they were socializing on some of the apps, right? And also giving context, right? The feds also had created an easy monetary policy that enabled tech companies to raise capital and invest in growth. But then this sharp reversal happened in 2022, where people were returning back to work, children or students were returning back to school, and there wasn't people staying at home and shopping online. So you had people who were like, well, I don't really need to invest in more tech or more e-commerce because my sales are dwindling. or we just don't need the manpower that we needed from before. So, faced with a slowdown in growth and a downturn in the broader economy, tech companies started cutting staff after realizing that they've now overhired. And of course, another answer to that is that investors have changed how they're evaluating companies. And this came from Michael Cusumano. He's the deputy dean at the MIT Sloan School of Management, who stated that the companies have been growing really, really fast, right? Especially when the pandemic happened and we were coming out of it. Well, not coming out of it, but when the pandemic happened and the companies who created these technologies to make work and automation even better, uh, they were really cashing in. And so investors weren't really caring where the profits came from, they just wanted it. And so they didn't mind that companies were hiring a lot of employees. But now that we're in a growth period right now, where I'm sorry, now that we're not in a growth period now, and there's been these slowdowns, investors are being more cautious, and I'm sure the board is also being cautious and saying we don't need as many employees as we did before. Okay, but keeping it perspective, I am talking about the companies that are laying off. I'm not talking about the companies that have held steady throughout the years and didn't do the overhiring, right? So the question now is, how are they going to recover? Now that we know these facts, we know some of the underlying conditions about why the layoffs are happening. How are they going to recover? So I think a great quote, and this is by Roger Lee, the creator of layoff.fyi. He says tech layoffs will stop when and only when it becomes clearer that the Fed is able to slow down inflation. Because that's a part of the problem. Some of these experts are seeing that we are already, they consider that we're already in a recession or we're going into a recession. So inflation is like steadily happening, and the companies may be kind of getting ready for this recession that is looming. Not to say that they are for sure that that's what's going to happen, but they're trying to do their due diligence to make sure that they're ready for that. And not that these companies don't have money, because they have a lot of money in reserve. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars in reserve, but they're not going to use that to save their workforce. Again, in perspective, I am not talking about some of the other companies that exist within the tech industry. I'm talking about the ones that are doing layoffs. Okay, and then just so you know, while these layoffs are happening, as you saw with the OpenAI, with Google, these same companies are still hiring, right? And companies around the world are still hiring. They're focused on different strategies and investing time and money into new technologies. So if you're someone who is working on a new technology such as OpenAI, it was most likely that you weren't laid off, because they still need people to helm these ships of new technology. And then every sector has a season where there is layoffs. I mean, over the course of my life, there have been lots of companies that have experienced huge layoffs. So this is just a season for tech, and it will eventually subside. And in researching the most stable industries, healthcare, utilities, education, consumer services, and government jobs top the list. And all of those industries have embraced tech and employ a significant amount of tech workers. So, although they may not be considered a tech company, they still employ a huge amount of tech workers. All right, so what should you do? because it's great to know all of those numbers, and it's great to say, well, it's not affecting every single company in the industry, but I need to know how that affects me. So just like I've said before, when there was times when in any industry I was working, there were layoffs, and I just kept doing what I did and was really never really affected by that. So you should just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. If you're going to a school or you're in some type of education program, just keep doing that. Don't divert from your path, because eventually, as these sectors recover, then they're going to again go on this mass hiring because, they have lost so many workers. Um, so that's one. Two, work on adding meaningful skills. Practice your interviewing skills, um, practice on your technical knowledge, um, understand that there are new trends that are happening in these industries. Do you have knowledge about a particular programming language? Do you have product management skills? Do you have project management skills? Um, are you aware of any new technologies that need some help? Fintech is a large one, data science, data analytics. Um, what's the other one? Climate tech is going to be huge. Agriculture tech is huge. So there are still ways to set yourself apart from everyone else. And when you put that on your resume, and you're applying for certain positions, depending on what industry you're applying for, even though you might still be a tech worker, it depends on what industry you're applying for. Those skills set you apart. So you're practicing these technical assessments. If you're going to be a software engineer, keep doing that. Keep practicing, keep working on yourself, work on your soft skills, work on your interviewing skills. Learn how to properly format your resume. Have a LinkedIn, do a LinkedIn audit on your LinkedIn profile to make sure that people know that you have these skills, and that you're ready to work. Research the facts. That's the last one. Okay, because again, everything is in perspective. So when you hear about these huge layoffs, um, don't let it deter you from what you're doing, because it may be that those people were laid off for one reason or another. So do your research. Don't just listen to what other people are saying, because I'm sure if you didn't really know about Twitter and all of the mishaps that happen with Twitter, you would be saying to yourself, I thought Twitter was this large company and they had all this money. How come they're doing layoffs? But people in the industry had already known that Twitter was already losing money. So you can't keep employing this large workforce if you're already losing money. And know that there's always going to be work for you. Uh, Again, if you want to make sure that that you're going to have a job after you graduate, or you've worked on your skills, look at different sectors that are hiring, the government being one. Other industries that I named, healthcare, utilities. Those sectors have been proven to be more stable, and have less layoffs than other sectors. So just do your due diligence and your research, and you'll be fine. All right. And now I am going to open